Welcome back to Life's Chillin'. My name is Avital, and this week's Parshat is Parshat Beshalach, which is a really beautiful Parsha, because in Parshat Beshalach, the Jews are finally free. They've left Egypt, and in this week's Parsha, God splits the sea for them so that they can cross through on dry land, and the sea closes back up over the Egyptians, in which the Egyptians drown, and the Jewish people are able to recognize and realize that they are finally free. And because they're free, they sing these songs of praises to God. And one of the songs that they sing, the Song of the Sea, is something that we still say in the daily prayer service to this day. So it's a really beautiful parsha and a beautiful story. Before the sea split, when the Jewish people were fleeing from Egypt, when they had left Egypt and they realized that the Egyptians are coming after them, they are naturally afraid. And they tell Moses, when they see that the Egyptians are coming after them, they say, "Were there no graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the wilderness? What is that you have done to us to take us out of Egypt? Is this not the statement that we made to you in Egypt, saying, 'Let us be and we will serve Egypt'? For it is better that we should serve Egypt than that we should die in the wilderness." So it's kind of an understandable reaction. Here they are, the sea has not split yet, they're running towards a sea. The Egyptians are running after them. The Egyptians are this great, powerful army, and these are people who are not trained to fight. They've been slaves for the past couple hundred of years. They're used to being subservient, and now they see the Egyptians running after them. It's natural to be afraid. It's natural to say, like, why did you bring us out in the middle of the desert? We were okay. We could have continued to live as slaves. At least we would have been alive. Like, death is worse than slavery. That's what they were basically saying. For them, they would have rather continued to be enslaved than to die in the wilderness. And so that's kind of an understandable thing. But it ends up becoming sort of this theme throughout the Parsha that the Jews are saying, like, why didn't you just let us stay in Egypt? Why are we out here? Why are we going to die in the desert? And it's especially interesting that they are questioning Moses and questioning God after the splitting of the sea, because what it says is, after the sea split, the Torah tells us, quote, "They," meaning the people, the Jewish people, "had faith in Hashem and in Moses his servant." So it's very interesting because while it says that after the sea split they had faith in God and faith in Moses, what we're about to see really makes it look like they didn't have faith. Like they didn't have faith in God or in Moses. So the people are in the desert, and that's where they're going to spend the next 40 years. They don't know that it's going to be 40 years yet, but they know that they're in the desert headed towards the land of Canaan, which is now Israel. So they're in the desert, and the people need water. They're thirsty. So they ask Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" And they are blessed with water. And it said that that was a test from God, that God tested the people, and they got water. So that's an interesting point that we'll come back to. Next, they complained, saying, quote, "If only we had died by the hand of Hashem in the land of Egypt, as we sat by the pot of meat, when we ate bread to satiety, for you have taken us out to this wilderness to kill us, this entire congregation, by famine." Okay, so again, first they complain about water, and they were given water. Now they are complaining about food. Why did you take us out here to die by famine in the desert? Why didn't you leave us be in Egypt, where we had meat and we had food? It's another complaint, which is quite amazing. And afterwards, as a result, God sort of makes it be so that they're going to have manna every single day. Manna is the substance that sort of rained down from the sky on a daily basis for the Jewish people to eat every day except for Shabbat. On Friday, they would receive a double portion so that they'd have left over for Shabbat. I actually did an entire video about this and how it was an exercise for the Jewish people to have faith in God. I did that 2 years ago. I'll leave the video link in the description if you want to know more about the manna situation. But God made it be so that they'd have manna and meat every single day, that they were never going to be hungry, and God was very reliable. There was manna every single day without fail for the entire 40 years that the Jewish people were in the desert. So they complained about water, now they complained about food, and soon enough they traveled to another area, to Rephidim, where there wasn't water, and they said, "Why is it that you have brought us up from Egypt to kill me and my children and my livestock through thirst?" So now, yet again, they are complaining, why did you take us out of Egypt? We would have been fine in Egypt. You took us out just to die by thirst, by famine, by thirst again. So it's a very interesting thing. It doesn't really sound much like they are trusting in God, trusting in Moses. Moses then asks them, he says, why did you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? So Moses also doesn't seem to get it. He's like, why are you so upset about this? And why are you testing God by these complaints? Moses named this place where the Jewish people were the third time the Jewish people were complaining, where they were asking for water again. He named the place Masa Meribah, which means testing and quarreling. And the Torah tells us that he named it this because of the people testing the Lord, saying, is the Lord in our midst or not? So that makes it very clear that they were not really sure if they could trust in God, if they could have faith in God. So really the question is, why were the people so afraid of trusting in God? Why were the people continuing to challenge Moses about where's the food, where's the water? You could have just left us in Egypt and we would have been happy, we would have been okay. Why'd you bring us out here to die? Why are they having all of these doubts? And especially right after that line, after the end of the song, at the beginning of the Song of the Sea, when it says, they had faith in Hashem and in Moses, his servant. Where did that faith go? What happened? So I think something interesting is that up until then, look, they'd just been getting proven that God is with them, God's going to support them. There were these 10 plagues. God saved them only, he saved the Jewish people. He took them out of Egypt. He split the sea. They watched the Egyptians drown in the sea, and they got to walk on dry land and be saved. They'd had all these highs, all of these big proven things that God was with them and God was supporting them and God was on their side. And now they're in the desert on this journey where they don't have those same comforts, so to speak, that they had in Egypt of water or food readily available. And they're starting to have these doubts, like, were we fooled? Was this all a trick? Have we all just left Egypt, and are we foolish people for doing so? Should we have just stayed as slaves? Would it have been safer? Because they're kind of starting to have doubt in God, and especially it's supported by that line saying, is the Lord in our midst or not? Once they start to get challenged with, here's a few days without water, the manna hasn't begun yet, and they're not sure where they're going to get their food from. They're starting to get to the realities of life in the desert and of life outside of slavery when now it's free people. And they're starting to be a little bit like, ooh, were we wrong? Were we misled? Have we been fooled? Because now we're in the desert. We've left Egypt, and that's wonderful. But where is God now? Like, where is this person that does all these miraculous grand gestures that now here we are in the desert without our food and without our water? Have we made a huge mistake? The people were not sure whether God existed, whether God was in their midst, whether he was going to support them. They had kind of lost some of that faith after the grandeur of the miracles. They had lost themselves a little bit in the practicalities of everyday life in the desert. It was new to them. It was foreign to them. They were so accustomed to their lives. And now you're telling them to have faith in this being that they can't see, who for those first few days didn't provide them with the water or with the food. That was a really difficult shift for them. It was a really difficult shift for them to maintain their faith, I would say, after seeing all of these big miracles and now going down to this smaller level of day-to-day miracles rather than the grandeur of, blood and fire and hail and all these big miracles. Then seeing God on the way God does miracles every single day, they weren't really sure that he was still around because they weren't seeing these huge things anymore. But the way in which God continued to provide for them by giving them water and by giving them food and then manna and meat and all of these things on a daily basis, it trained them to have faith in God. It trained them to recognize that he was there even in those seemingly small areas. Yes, we need food and water to survive, but they're not things that we think about all the time. We're just fortunate to have them. But the people had to realize that God has a role in all of those things on a daily basis, and every breath that God is blessing us with, that he's the one who's in control of all those things, and it's not just in those big grand things that we're seeing. So the people had to learn to have faith in God, learn to recognize that He was there, and it made their lives a lot easier once they were able to do that, and once they were able to renew that faith in God and faith in Moses. In our own lives, we too need to learn to have faith and to recognize God's presence in our lives. It's something we kind of have to train ourselves for, but to recognize that we have so many blessings. If you think about it, like the way in Judaism that it works, that you make a blessing before your meal and after your meal, after you go to the bathroom, after all these mundane daily activities that we so take for granted, those blessings are designed to help us recognize and realize God's role in every little activity and action in our day. In every, again, the ability to breathe is something that we just take for granted so often. The ability to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, all of these senses that we have, they're things that we take for granted, and yet God has blessed us with all of those things. So it's to come to this recognition and appreciation of God's role in our life, not just in those big moments, but also in those small everyday things, and to have faith that God's going to help us with those things, and to trust that God is the one who is making it possible for us. If we can do that, we can hopefully avoid a lot of the difficulties and the anguish that the Jewish people had when they were in the desert. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful week and a Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.